I was 26 when I first realized that a workplace could feel like a trap, not because of the walls or the workload, but because of the people who controlled it. Every morning, I'd walk into the sleek glass building with a polite smile, clutching my files like armor. The scent of polished floors and coffee filled the air. But beneath it all was something heavier, an invisible pressure that lingered in every corner of that office dot. The company was one of the best in the city. Big projects, big names, and an even bigger reputation. But behind that glossy surface was a quiet rumor everyone knew but never spoke aloud. Our CEO, Daniel, had a history. A woman in her 40s, sharp as glass and beautiful in a way that made people nervous. Her words carried weight, her presence filled every room she entered, and her eyes had a way of making you feel seen, and sometimes that wasn't a good thing. She was powerful, intelligent, and elegant, the kind of woman who commanded respect just by existing. Yet there was something about her that always made me uneasy. The way she lingered too long in conversations with the female staff. The way she complimented them, softly but deliberately. It wasn't a secret that she preferred women, that wasn't the issue. It was the way she used that preference. The way she made attraction feel like authority. In my first few months at the company, I learned quickly how things worked. Some women welcomed her attention, thinking it might lead to promotions or favor. Others avoided her completely. I fell into the latter group, quiet, careful, professional. I kept my head down, met deadlines, and never gave her a reason to notice me. Still, it was impossible not to admire her. The way she led meetings, confident, calm, ruthless when needed. She could make an entire boardroom fall silent with a single glance. Sometimes I caught myself watching her from a distance, trying to understand how someone could be so composed, so in control of everyone else's world. I didn't like her methods, but I couldn't deny her power. The atmosphere in the office was strange, half respect, half fear. The walls carried whispers of those who'd left suddenly. A talented designer who quit after a late-night meeting. A junior analyst who transferred departments after personal reasons. No one said it directly, but everyone knew. Daniel's interest was not something you refused without consequences. I remember once, during lunch, a colleague leaned close and whispered, "Just stay out of her radar. That's the safest place to be." I nodded, pretending not to care, but inside I felt a chill. I didn't want to be anyone's target or anyone's escape. There were days when she'd walk past my desk and pause. Her perfume lingered longer than it should have, and her eyes flickered, assessing, calculating. I always met her gaze with a polite smile, then quickly returned to my computer. She'd move on, and I'd release the breath I didn't realize I was holding at company events. She'd mingle effortlessly, her charm disarming everyone. I once overheard her tell a marketing intern, "You have such a confident smile." "It's rare." The girl blushed, laughed nervously, and Daniel smiled back, that slow, knowing smile that made my stomach twist. I couldn't tell if it was jealousy, fear, or something else entirely. Every evening, when I packed my things and took the elevator down, I'd look at my reflection in the mirrored walls. I'd whisper to myself, stay professional, stay invisible, because in a place where beauty could become a liability, invisibility felt like safety. But the truth is, I was tired of pretending not to notice, tired of walking on eggshells. There was a heaviness that came with knowing too much and saying too little. Yet I told myself I was fine. As long as she didn't notice me, I was safe. Sometimes, though, I wondered about Daniel. What made her like that? Was it loneliness? Was it power? Or maybe she just liked control more than affection? I'd see her late in the evening, still at her desk when most of us had gone home. Her face softened when she thought no one was watching. For a second, she looked human. Then the mask returned, sharp as ever. Still, even with all that unease. I couldn't deny that she had something magnetic about her, something that drew people in despite the fear. Maybe that's what made her so dangerous. The office was a reflection of her personality, beautiful but cold, impressive but suffocating. Everyone worked hard, smiled hard, and kept secrets harder. The walls might as well have been made of glass, transparent but impossible to break through. I didn't realize then how much my life was about to change, how that same glass world I tried so hard to survive and would eventually shatter, not because of me, but because of someone I loved. Dot, if someone had told me back then that my boss would one day become the reason. I question everything, my job, my loyalty, my heart, I would have laughed. But that was before Alex walked into my life, before love gave me something to protect, before I realized that in Daniel's world, every woman was a game, and I just didn't want to be one of her trophies. Alex came into my life like a breath of air in a windowless room. She wasn't the kind of person who tried to impress anyone. Her charm was effortless. She had the softness in her eyes, a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered, even when you were just talking about ordinary things. I met her at a friend's birthday party, and from that night on, she never really left my thoughts. She was 26 like me, but she carried herself with a kind of innocence that life hadn't managed to harden yet. I was drawn to her laughter, the kind that started quietly and then filled the room, warm and sincere. We became close over time, meeting for coffee after work, exchanging long texts at night, talking about everything and nothing. And slowly, without even realizing it, our friendship started to feel like something more. Dot. There was no confession, no dramatic moment. Just small things, the way her hand brushed mine when we walked side by side, the way her eyes lingered when she smiled at me, the way silence between us never felt uncomfortable. It was simple, pure, and maybe that's what made it so dangerous. Alex didn't know much about my boss, Daniel. I had mentioned her once or twice, described her as strict, intense, and someone best avoided. But Alex, being her usual kind self, had laughed it off. "You always make people sound scarier than they are," she teased. That day, I remember, started like any other. The air outside was warm, the office unusually quiet. I had asked Alex to drop by around noon to help deliver a few design drafts. She printed for me at home because our office printer had broken down. It was supposed to be quick, just a visit, nothing more. When she walked into the building, heads turned. I noticed it immediately. Alex wasn't trying to stand out, but she did. Her floral dress, her soft brown hair tied loosely, her polite smile as she waited at the reception desk. The kind of beauty that didn't demand attention but received it anyway. I greeted her, trying to keep things casual, but part of me was already tense. My colleagues greeted her too, curious, friendly. There was laughter, small talk. For a moment, it felt nice, like two parts of my world had met without conflict. Then Daniel appeared. I didn't even see her approach at first. 1 second, Alex was smiling at something one of the interns said, and the next, I felt the shift in the room, that sharp silence that followed when Daniel entered. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, her perfume trailed through the air, and every conversation died mid-sentence. Her gaze landed on a LYX dot. It wasn't immediate. It was slow, assessing the way Daniel looked at things she wanted to own. Her lips curved into that half smile I'd seen so many times before, the one that made people think she was being kind. She greeted me briefly, then turned to Alex. "And who might this be?" she asked, her voice smooth but cold underneath. I swallowed. "This is Alex, my friend." She just stopped by to drop off some documents. "A friend," Daniel repeated, her eyes not leaving Alex's face. "Well, you have very charming friends." Alex, being her polite self, smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Miss Daniel. I've heard a lot about your company." Danielle tilted her head. All good things, I hope. Alex laughed lightly, mostly about how hard everyone works here. There was a brief silence, the kind that felt like a held breath. Danielle smiled wider, but her eyes were doing something else, tracing, studying, measuring. I knew that look. I'd seen it before, and I hated that I recognized it so quickly after a moment. Danielle nodded politely and walked away, but I could feel her attention linger long after she'd left. My chest tightened. Something about the way she had looked at Alex felt wronged out. When Alex finally left, I tried to shake off the unease. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I'd overreacted because I'd heard too many stories. But later that day, Danielle proved me right. Around 5 in the evening, just when most employees were winding down, my phone buzzed with a message from her secretary. Danielle wants to see you in her office. I hesitated before knocking on her door. Inside, Danielle sat behind her massive desk. Papers neatly stacked, her expression unreadable. Come in. Sit down, she said. Her tone calm, too calm. I sat. Pretending to be composed, she leaned back, fingers interlocked. Your friend from earlier? Alex, was it? My stomach dropped. Yes, I said softly. She seems bright, Danielle continued. Educated? Confident. Is she looking for a job by any chance? I hesitated. Not that I know of. She works freelance sometimes, but interesting, Danielle interrupted. We could use someone like her in the communications team. Fresh energy. You should tell her to send me her resume. I forced a smile, trying to hide the sudden rush of panic rising in my throat. I'll let her know. Danielle smiled, slow, deliberate. Good. It's always nice when talented people come through good recommendations. The meeting ended, but her words stayed with me. I walked out of her office feeling like the walls had closed in around me. By the time I reached my desk, I couldn't focus. My hands were shaking. I stared at my screen, replaying every second of that interaction. Her tone, her expression, it wasn't professional interest. It was something else, something I'd seen before. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing, that maybe she really did see potential in Alex, but deep down, I knew better. That night, when I got home, Alex called. Her voice was cheerful, unaware. Your boss seems really confident, she said. Kind of intimidating now. She looked at me like she was trying to figure me out. I forced a laugh, pretending it was nothing. Yeah, I said. That's just how she is. But when I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at my phone screen, heart heavy with dread. Because I knew that tone, that look, that quiet calculation. Danielle had found her next target. 3 days passed before Danielle called me into her office again. Those 72 hours had felt longer than weeks. I had avoided eye contact with her, kept my head down, and focused on my work as if nothing had happened. But deep inside, I knew something was coming. I could feel it, that creeping sense of being watched, of someone waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Her secretary's voice came over the intercom right after lunch. Danielle wants to see you in her office. The words sent a chill through me. My hands went cold as I smoothed my blazer, trying to quiet the tremor in my fingers. When I stepped into her cabin, she was standing by the window, sunlight catching in her hair. She turned slowly, her smile too practiced, too kind. Double quotes. There you are, she said. Come in, close the door. I obeyed. The sound of the door clicking shut felt heavier than it should have. She gestured for me to sit, her eyes studying me with quiet amusement. I've been thinking about your friend, Alex. There it was. The name alone made my stomach tighten. Deniel continued, her tone casual, almost gentle. I looked into her background. Marketing degree, good social skills, creative mind. She'd fit perfectly into our communications department. I tried to keep my face neutral. She's talented, I said carefully, but she's not looking for a job right now. Daniel chuckled softly. Everyone's looking for a better opportunity. Sometimes they just don't know it yet. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She moved around the desk and leaned against it, crossing her arms. I'm offering her a full-time position, a generous one. The salary will be twice what she could earn elsewhere. Benefits, bonuses, even a corner office if she proves herself. I could hear my pulse in my ears. That's very kind of you, I murmured. It's not kindness, she corrected, eyes narrowing slightly. It's instinct. I see potential when it walks through my doors. Her lips curled into a faint smile, but her gaze was sharp, searching me for reaction. I forced another polite smile, though every muscle in my body wanted to scream. Inside, I wasn't calm. Inside, I was unraveling, because I knew what this was. Daniel didn't do generosity. She didn't see potential. She saw challenges. She saw desires she wanted to control, to claim, to test out, and now she'd chosen Alex. She must have seen something flicker in my expression because her voice softened suddenly. You're very protective of her, aren't you? I froze. She's my friend, I replied, trying to sound steady. D-E-N-I-E. I smiled again. Slow, deliberate. Of course. Friends are worth protecting. Especially the beautiful ones. My breath caught, but before I could respond, she stood upright, walked back to her chair, and picked up a folder. Tell her to come in tomorrow. I'd like to meet her personally. A short interview. Nothing formal. I'll let her know, I said quietly, rising to my feet. Good, she said, eyes glinting. I think she fit in perfectly here. When I left her office, my legs felt weak. The hallway seemed longer than usual, the fluorescent lights harsher. I could barely breathe until I was back at my desk. My mind was spinning. That evening when I met Alex after work. She was waiting for me outside the cafe we always went to, the one with soft music and dim lights that used to calm me. But not tonight. She smiled when she saw me, waving cheerfully. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said as I sat down. Something like that, I replied, forcing a smile. Daniel called me in today. Alex raised an eyebrow. What for? She wants to offer you a job. Alex blinked, then laughed. What, me? Why? She said she saw potential in you, I said, my voice tight. A communications position, a good salary. She wants to meet you tomorrow. Alex tilted her head, amused. Wow, that's unexpected. I mean, I barely spoke to her. I know, I said softly. That's what worries me. Alex leaned closer, studying my face. Hey, are you okay? I hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't sound paranoid. Alex, she's not someone you should trust easily. She has a way of making things look professional when they're not. Alex frowned. You mean she's... I nodded before she could finish. I've seen what she does. I've seen people leave because of her. Alex went quiet for a moment, her expression softening. Then she reached across the table and touched my hand. Hey, don't worry. I'm not interested in her or job. You know that, right? I managed a small smile. I know. I just don't want her dragging you into something ugly. We sat there for a while, sipping our drinks in uneasy silence. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over, that Daniel's offer would fade away, like so many other empty promises, but that illusion shattered later that night. It was past midnight when my phone buzzed. A message from Alex. We need to talk. My heart skipped. I called her immediately. She answered after a few seconds, her voice low and hesitant. I wasn't going to tell you, she said, but I think you should know. My chest tightened. Tell me what? She texted me, Alex whispered. Daniel, She found me on social media. Said she wanted to personally discuss opportunities with me. I felt my throat close. What did she say exactly? There was a pause, and then Alex's voice broke slightly. She said she could make my future brighter if I spent some time alone with her. I went silent, completely silent. The room felt smaller, the air too heavy to breathe. My mind screamed, but no words came out. Alex continued quietly. I didn't reply. I swear I didn't. I didn't want to make you upset. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but the damage was already done. My world, the fragile balance I've been clinging to, cracked right down the middle. I wasn't angry at Alex. I was angry at the power Daniel held, the way she twisted everything she touched. Angry that someone could use authority to invade something pure, something personal. I sat there, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. She's crossed the line, I whispered finally. She's trying to take away the one thing that makes me feel safe. Alex's voice trembled. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. But as I hung up, my chest felt hollow. Because I knew Daniel, she didn't stop when someone said no. And for the first time since I'd started working at that company, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my job anymore. I was fighting for the woman I loved. The silence between us had grown louder with each passing day. At work, Daniel's shadow stretched across every corridor I walked through. I could feel her gaze even when she wasn't there, like invisible threads tightening around me, around us. She didn't need to say much anymore. Her presence was enough to remind me who held the power. Alex and I stopped meeting as often. It wasn't because we didn't want to. It was because I didn't know how to handle the storm that had entered our lives. Every time my phone buzzed with a new email or message, my stomach clenched in fear that it might be something else from Daniel. Another move, another trapped out of the office. Daniel behaved as if nothing had happened. She smiled in meetings, complimented my work, and occasionally dropped Alex's name with casual curiosity. Has your friend thought about the job yet? She'd ask lightly, pretending to be generous, professional. Fair, but her eyes always betrayed her, that slow, burning interest that had nothing to do with business. By the third day, I stopped replying to most of Daniel's small talk. I buried myself in work, left the office early, and avoided her floor altogether. My colleagues whispered about how strange it was that I seemed nervous lately, but I didn't care. I was protecting someone far more important than my reputation. That evening, as I sat alone in my small apartment, the city outside was quiet. I hadn't heard from Alex since the day she told me about the messages. I tried not to imagine Daniel's words, her manipulation, her charm, her promises. I didn't want to picture Alex reading those texts. Even if she'd ignored them, then around 8 p.m., there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was, Alex. Her face was tired. Her hair tied back loosely, eyes red as if she'd been crying. She didn't say a word at first. She just looked at me, a look full of weight and meaning. Can I come in? She finally whispered. I nodded. She walked in slowly, her usual warmth replaced by a trembling uncertainty. I could feel her heartbeat even from a distance, matching mine in fear and exhaustion. I should have told you sooner, she said quietly. Her voice broke a little. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Daniel messaged me again. She said she had a new position, something perfect for me, and she wanted to discuss it over dinner. She said she could make my future brighter if I spent some time alone with her. I froze. I had expected it, but hearing it out loud was like being struck by lightning. I could feel my throat tighten, my chest burning with a mix of anger and helplessness. Alex's eyes filled with tears. I didn't reply, she said quickly. I swear I didn't. I just didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to make things worse for you at work. I stepped closer, searching her face. Why didn't you block her? I was scared, she said honestly. She's your boss. She knows where I live, where I work. She even mentioned my art page online, said she'd help me get exposure. It felt like she knew everything about me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The room felt too small, too suffocating. I wanted to scream, to quit, to run away from all of it. But when I looked at Alex, trembling, vulnerable, sincere, all that anger melted into something softer. She can't take you away, I said finally. My voice barely above a whisper. Alex shook her head gently. Then she reached out and took my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding. She won't, she said, because I already have what I want. And it's you. The moment those words left her lips, something inside me broke. All the fear, all the tension, all the sleepless nights, it all came rushing out. I pulled her close and just held her. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Tears slipped silently down my face, landing on her shoulder. I felt her fingers stroke my back gently, as if reminding me that love, real love, wasn't fragile. It was fierce, protective, unyielding. I'm sorry, I whispered through my tears. You shouldn't have been dragged into this. I should have never brought you there. She shook her head against my chest. No, none of this is your fault. People like her, they think they can own others because they have power. But I'm not for sale, Julia. And you're not her toy either. Her words felt like a flame in the dark, small but strong enough to chase away the shadows. We sat like that for a long time, wrapped in silence and the faint hum of city lights outside the window. The air was thick with emotion, yet for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. Later, as we sat side by side on the couch, Alex turned to me and said softly, You can't keep working there. She won't stop. I looked down at my hands. She was right. Every day I stayed meant another chance for Daniel to twist things, to use her authority to destroy what little peace I had left. But leaving meant losing everything I'd worked for, the stability, the career I'd built from scratch. It's not fair, I murmured. I've done nothing wrong, and yet I'm the one who has to run. Alex squeezed my hand. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. Those words lingered between us, heavy but true. When she leaned in and pressed her forehead against mine, I realized something. Love doesn't just survive in soft moments. It survives in defiance, in courage, in the decision to protect what truly matters. It wasn't just a company anymore, I whispered. It was a battlefield, and she had turned my love into a war. Alex smiled sadly, brushing a tear from my cheek. Then let's win it together. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling, exhausted but calm. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep living under someone else's control. Not when it meant risking the one person who made my world worth staying in, by morning. I had made my choice. I would walk away from the company, from the fear, from Daniel's power, because no career, no paycheck, and no position was worth losing Alex. For the first time in months, I felt free. Morning sunlight spilled across my desk, but it felt cold, almost cruel. The office that had once been my pride now felt like a cage. Every screen, every hallway, every polite smile from a coworker, all of it seemed tainted by fear and silence. I had made up my mind overnight. I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. The decision didn't come easy. I had fought with myself for hours, pacing the room while Alex slept. Part of me whispered, You've worked too hard to walk away. But another voice, stronger, steadier, answered back, You've already lost too much staying quiet. By the time I stepped into the building that morning, my resignation letter was folded neatly inside my bag. My hands were shaking, but my heart was certain. Before handing it in, though, I went to HR. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. I wanted it on record. I wanted someone someday to know that I had tried. A middle-aged man named Philip listened politely as I told him everything. Daniel's messages, the job offer to Alex, the private meetings, the manipulation. He nodded slowly, occasionally scribbling notes, but I could tell from his expression that the outcome had already been decided. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he cleared his throat and said carefully, "You do understand that Miss Daniel is—" "Well, she's the CEO. These are serious allegations. Are you sure you want to proceed with this?" His tone wasn't concerned. It was cautious, the kind used when protecting the powerful. I felt my pulse quicken. "I'm sure," I said. "I'm not here for drama. I just want it documented." He nodded again, eyes darting toward the glass wall, as if afraid someone might overhear. "We'll review the matter internally," he said finally. "But between us, it might be better for your career if you move on quietly. You're a talented employee. You'll find another opportunity." There it was, the unspoken truth. They wouldn't touch her. They never would. I left the HR office without another word. My hands were numb, my chest heavy. Yet somewhere beneath all that exhaustion was a strange calm. I had done what I could. Now it was time to free myself. I printed my resignation letter and slipped it into an envelope. When I reached Danielle's office, her assistant glanced up and said softly, "She's expecting you." Expecting me. Of course she was. I stepped inside. Danielle stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. Her reflection glimmered faintly against the glass, tall, confident, untouchable. When she turned around, that same knowing smile curved her lips. "So," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "you've finally decided." I placed the envelope on her desk. "Yes, I'm resigning effective immediately." She raised an eyebrow, walking toward me with measured grace. "After all these years of good work? Because of a misunderstanding?" I didn't flinch. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Danielle. You crossed a line, and you know it." Her smile widened, a mixture of amusement and warning. "You think anyone will believe you?" She asked softly. "You think they'll take your word over mine?" I met her gaze. "Maybe not, but I don't need them to. I just need to walk away with my dignity intact." For a moment, her mask slipped. Her eyes hardened. "You're making a mistake," she said. "I was only trying to help that girl, Alex, isn't it? You should be careful trusting people like her. Girls like that never stay loyal." The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't let them show. I straightened my shoulders, my voice steady. "Maybe not all women fall for power," I said quietly. "Some still choose love." For the first time, she didn't have a response. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came. We just stood there, two women on opposite sides of a silent war, one who ruled through control, and one who finally chose freedom. I turned to leave. "Julia," she called after me, her voice suddenly low, almost human. "You'll regret this." I didn't look back. "Maybe," I said, "but at least the regret will be mine, not yours." And then I walked out. Each step down that hallway felt like shedding a layer of fear. I passed the desks where I'd once sat late into the night, the conference rooms where I'd bitten my tongue, the elevator where I'd first seen her smile and thought it meant mentorship instead of ownership. By the time the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt lighter. Outside, the sun was brighter than I'd seen it in months. The city noise rushed around me. Buses, chatter, footsteps, all of it alive, chaotic, real. And then, just beyond the glass doors, I saw her. Alex stood waiting near the curb, her hands tucked into her coat pockets, eyes searching the crowd until they found mine. When they did, she smiled, not the polite kind, but the one that said, "I knew you'd make it out." I walked straight to her. She didn't ask what happened. She just reached out, brushed her fingers against mine, and whispered, "You're free now." I laughed softly, though tears blurred my vision. "Free and unemployed," I joked weakly. She squeezed my hand. "Then we start over. Together." We began walking down the street, the company building shrinking behind us with every step. My chest still ached from anger, from loss, from everything that could have been, but underneath it all was pride. I had chosen love over fear. As we stopped at the corner, Alex turned to me. "Do you regret it?" I looked back once, the glass tower gleaming in the distance like a monument to everything I'd survived. "No," I said. "I regret staying silent for so long. But not this." A breeze passed between us, carrying away the last trace of her, Daniel's perfume, her power, her presence. I breathed it out and didn't look back again. We crossed the street, side by side. For the first time in months, my steps felt steady, my heart unburdened. I wasn't the scared employee anymore. I was the woman who had finally learned that walking away doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it means winning the war quietly, without a battle cry, without applause, just the soft, certain sound of freedom and your own heartbeat. It's strange how silence can feel louder after chaos. The weeks following my resignation passed in a blur. Boxes, applications, late-night talks with Alex, and quiet mornings filled with uncertainty. But slowly, the noise inside me began to fade. We moved into a small apartment on the city's edge, nothing fancy. Just 2 rooms, a leaky faucet, and sunlight that spilled through sheer curtains every morning. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread in my chest. I traded my corner office for a cracked tile kitchen, but somehow it felt like freedom. Alex found part-time work at a design studio nearby, and I joined a mid-level firm, smaller, humbler, but honest. The people there were kind. They asked about my skills, not my looks. No one lingered too close. No one used power as a weapon. Still, the ghosts came sometimes. On rainy nights, when the city lights blurred outside our window, I'd close my eyes and hear Daniel's voice, low, confident, uncheckable. I'd see her reflection in glass the same way I once saw my own fear. But when I reached across the bed and felt Alex's hand in mine, the memory lost its grip. Alex never asked me to forget. She just reminded me to live. We built small routines, morning coffee on the balcony, messy dinners cooked together, laughter over burnt toast. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was enough. Sometimes when I caught Alex humming to herself while she worked, I'd feel this sudden ache, gratitude mixed with guilt. She had been dragged into a storm she never asked for, yet she never once blamed me. One evening, as we sat on the floor surrounded by half-open boxes, she looked at me and said softly, "Do you ever miss it? The old job, the stability?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said honestly. "I miss who I was before it, before I learned how cruel admiration can feel. But I don't miss the place that taught me to be afraid." She smiled, that small, knowing smile that had once changed everything. "You're stronger now," she said, "even if you don't see it." And maybe she was right. At the new company, I kept my distance from office gossip. I worked quietly, steadily. When my new boss, a kind woman named Elise, praised me for my professionalism, I almost cried. Not because of the compliment, but because of what it represented. Safety. Days turned into months. Seasons changed. And one evening, as the first winter rain tapped against the windows, I found myself alone in the living room, thinking back to the moment I had walked out of Daniel's office. I had been terrified that day, not of losing a job, but of losing myself. Now, standing here, I realized something profound. I hadn't lost anything. I had reclaimed it. The trauma still lingered in small ways, flinching at raised voices, second-guessing compliments, but healing is not forgetting. It's learning to live with what tried to break you, Alex came out from the kitchen, 2 mugs of tea in her hands. She handed me one and sat beside me on the couch. The city lights shimmered outside, reflecting in her eyes. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Sometimes. Not with hate anymore. Just pity." She had everything but peace. Alex leaned her head on my shoulder. "And you?" I took a deep breath. "I have less, but it feels like more." We sat there in silence, the sound of rain wrapping around us like a lullaby. I could almost hear my own heartbeat syncing with hers, steady, certain, a live dot in that moment. I understood something that all the chaos had been trying to teach me. Love is not possession. It's not control. It's not fear disguised as power. Love is quiet, patient, loyal. It stands firm even when everything else falls apart. When I finally spoke again, my voice came out as a whisper, more to myself than to her. I thought leaving would break me, but it saved me. Alex smiled, eyes glistening, because sometimes, I continued, the bravest thing you can do for love is to walk away. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, followed by a hush of rain that shimmered against the pavement. Somewhere far away, the city was still busy, horns, chatter, endless motion. But here, in this tiny apartment, everything felt still. I rested my head against the window pane, watching droplets race each other down the glass. Each one felt like a memory of fear, of strength, of survival. I thought of the young woman I used to be, polite, quiet, invisible, and felt an unexpected tenderness toward her. She had endured more than anyone knew, and still found the courage to leave Dot in another life. Maybe Daniel would have changed. Maybe power wouldn't have corrupted her heart. But that wasn't my responsibility to fix. My only duty was to heal Dot as the night deepened. Alex dozed off on my shoulder. I watched her sleep, the soft rise and fall of her breath, the peace on her face, and felt an ache of gratitude so strong it brought tears to my eyes. We had both survived something ugly and walked into something fragile but true. That, to me, was victory. When the lights dimmed and the rain softened to a whisper, I whispered to the darkness, not in anger, but in grace. "Thank you, Daniel, for teaching me what I'll never become." And then I closed my eyes. The final image lingered, city lights reflected in the wet streets. A faint hum of life beyond the window, and 2 women curled together in quiet resilience. The world outside kept moving, uncaring, unstoppable. But inside that small room, peace had finally found a home. Asterisk.